Good morning. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. And let's see, we're going to go to gallery view, and then we're going to go to speaker view. And speaker view has Paul and Mary, even though they're not speaking. So I'm not sure why that is, but good morning to everybody. We'll work around this. My name is Carl Haltman. I'm the executive director here at Hokyoji, and welcome to the Hokyoji Sunday Dharma Talk series. This morning, we have my friend Tim Macejak is going to give the talk. And Tim has been involved in Zen practice for over 30 years. He began Zen practice as a teacherless sangha led by a group of experienced practitioners, and then practiced with a teacher at the Cedar Rapids Zen Center, followed by some years with an at-home practice. He has done a yearly retreat at Hokyoji since the early 90s and is currently the chair of our board of directors. He is the author of the book Zen Unleashed, Everyday Buddhist Wisdom from Man's Best Friend, released in 2013. So, Tim, where are you here? I'm gonna find you. There you are. And Zoom is still acting weird.
Will it help if I say something?
There. I got you pinned. Take it away.
Thanks, Carl. So when we do our Zazen meditation, we often have to deal with different sorts of distractions. There may be street traffic noise, TV on in the other room, something going on. And many of us may have our favorite distraction story. Mine, early on in my Zen practice, I was doing a one-day meditation retreat with the Iowa City Zen Center. It was Saturday morning, started at 5 a.m. or so, and at 8 a.m., some construction workers right outside our window started doing some work and blasting KRNA, the local rock station. Wasn't a residential area, so they probably thought no one was, around. At that time, we were renting a room in a Unitarian church, and this thing was really loud, rock music, all during Zazen. But was especially troublesome was the commercials. The blatant consumerism just blasted at you, including my favorite, meaning not my favorite, little ditty, save big money at Menards, twice an hour, every hour. After around 3 hours of this, one of our participants went down and talked to the workers, and they told them there was a family in the church struggling with some issues of life and death. And the workers turned the radio way down. Now, was this a lie? Was this the truth? I mean, one that definitely was a lie, because the workers were picturing, like a prayer meeting for someone that was gravely sick. But were we a family? Yeah, and we're dealing with matters of life and death. Well, that's Zen practice. So it was kind of the truth, but he was a little worried if you said there was a Buddhist group, that they might just be like, well, we're going to keep playing our music, So, but as difficult as that was nothing, not even anything comparable to what someone I know named Tim had to go through. Tim, shares the same name as me, was an inmate at the Anamosa Men's Reformatory, or I guess it's a state penitentiary now. And when I met Tim, he had been with a Buddhist group there for quite a number of years and had an established sitting practice. And what happens at the prison is every 6 months to a year, you change your cellmates. They don't have people keep the same cellmates over long periods of time. And Tim told the story that he got a new cellmate and seemed to be getting along, and it came time for him to, what he would normally do is meditation, and he kind of said to the guy, right, I do daily meditation, I'm going to do that right now. And the guy's like, okay. And so Tim started doing, his zazen, and his soulmate started talking to him. Just like, and so Tim explained, I actually kind of prefer some quiet, and it didn't seem to register. The guy just like kept talking to him, and several times he would explain, okay, I'm going to sit down, do my meditation, prefer, no talking. And the guy would nod his head, and then he'd be talking to him. And it wasn't just like, hey, Tim, what time is it? It was, more stuff like, Tim, did you hear what happened at the cafeteria today? Joe from cell block B was in line, and some new guy, he said, hey, you're stepping on my feet. And the guy's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. And Joe's like, well, if you didn't mean to, how come you keep doing it? And the guy's like, well, I haven't been doing it. The guy said, what, are you calling me a liar? So here you are trying to do zazen, and this prison gossip is 5 feet away from you, just being blasted right at you. So Tim's kind of like, what's he going to do? Because it's not like he can go to one of the corrections officers, one of the COs, and say, hey, my cellmate's kind of a chatty Cathy. Could I have like a private room to do my meditation in? I mean, it's prison. I think I'm not going to give a crap's ass, And even the chapel area, you don't have unlimited access to go there whenever you want. It's prison. And on Sunday, when you do have a little bit more access to the chapel, it's filled with groups coming in one right after the other, using all the different rooms. So here he is, and he's got this, and the guy's just not listening to him. So kind of like a no-win situation. What's Tim going to do? But he did end up coming up with a solution. But before I tell you what that solution is, I'll just let you chew on that for a little bit. Think, what might you do in that situation? My talk today, I want to talk about the Buddhist teaching on the 5 hindrances. And it may sound like that this cellmate is like the hindrance of all hindrances, but actually, when the Buddha talked about hindrances, it was negative mind states, negative persistent mind states that were dangerous if we kind of let them stick around too long. So what I want to do, I want to talk about what these 5 hindrances are, and then some of our approaches to deal with them. And then I'll return back to Tim and how this cellmate of his could have triggered any or all 5 of the hindrances, but did not, or not for any length of time. And then I'll let you know Tim's most inventive solution to his problem. So the 5 hindrances are ill will, greed or desire, anxiousness/worry. Those are both kind of one category. Dullness, drowsiness. Sometimes boredom is added in that category. The first translation I ever read was sloth and torpor, which I love those words because they sound like what they mean, but no one ever uses them in a sentence. So dullness and drowsiness and doubts. And part of the Eightfold Path skillful effort, the 6th part of the path, is dealing with overcoming these negative mind states. So it's kind of at the root of our practice. And let me just go through them here briefly. Ill will, basically harboring irritation, frustration, anger at another individual. And it can be as simple and mundane as just being annoyed by the sound of their breathing, if you're during meditation. But it can be much, much bigger. Greed, desire, we talk a lot about that in Buddhist practice, that clinging to our greeds causes suffering. I'll add to that kind of the idea that if only such and such happens, that I would be happy. And kind of clinging to that idea. If only the cellmate of mine would stop chattering at me, I would be happy. Anxiousness and worry. Sometimes it's called restlessness. We worry about things. We worry about what's going to happen in the future. And when we do that a lot, then we start becoming restless and anxious. Dullness and drowsiness, this is mental drowsiness and physical drowsiness, both aspects. And drowsiness is a good word because it's not really by choice. Let me give a counter example. Let's say it's a Sunday morning and you have a lot of things you're supposed to do, but you just kind of feel like watching old movies on TV. You might say, wow, this is dullness and drowsiness right here, but actually that's ill will. That's ill will towards yourself. That there's really nothing wrong with taking a morning off to watch some movies, but kind of that negative chatter we have toward ourself would fall under the ill will category. And doubt is the fifth of the hindrances. A lot of that meaning self-doubt. I can't do this practice. This is too difficult. I'm going backwards, that sort of thing. Now, the Buddha taught that these things always happen. It's not like, they might happen to you. These things they will come up in your practice. And I'll also make a distinction here between a hindrance and just some thoughts. So you're doing Zazen and the person next to you is breathing kind of heavy and you have some thought like, wow, that's really kind of an irritating sound. And then you go back to Zazen. That's not a hindrance because it's not persistent. We're going to have all sorts of thoughts during the day. But, when it's constantly obsessing about the person's breathing and being irritated by it. And then maybe if only they would stop breathing that way, then I would be happy. So we have that's that desire hindrance coming in. So ways we deal with the different hindrances. The first and initial response is with our mindfulness practice. We pay attention to the thought that's coming up. We observe it, and then return back to the present moment and our breath. And our attitude toward these thoughts can be a lot like if we're driving in a car and scenery passing by. So we're not buying into the thought so much, this person's breathing, oh my God. Suddenly it's just scenery going by the window. This is what my mind is doing right now. Thoughts about this guy's breathing or this woman's breathing. This kind of this removal and stepping back and just observing what's going on can remove a lot of the power and keep the hindrance from developing in the first place. Keep it from getting into that obsessive state where we want to stop thinking about it, but we can't. The next step, and this actually was new to me. When you prepare for these talks, sometimes you learn things, and this was all over the place. So somehow I didn't get the memo. But the next step is to replace the negative mind state with its opposite. So if you're feeling, the desire hindrance is coming up, to start to have thoughts of generosity, maybe toward another person or whatever, to replace this desire with the opposite, generosity. The ill will hindrance. In Buddhism, we talk about metta, which is often translated as loving kindness, to start wishing good thoughts on the other person. Or if the ill will is against yourself, good thoughts toward yourself, which can be difficult. But that's our next step on dealing with these things. But the thoughts keep persisting. And it's like you want them to stop, but they're not listening. So the next thing would be to access our personal tool bag of tricks. Something we develop over time, and it's different for every person, but there may be things you find that work in getting you out of these mind states. So for example, with the sloth and torpor mind state, you may have discovered that it's hard for you to have this physical and mental laziness when you take your dog for a walk. They're just filled with such excitement. It kind of snaps you out of that mind state. You may find that with, excuse me, when you're just totally irritated with another person, that what snaps you out of that is going and weeding in the garden. Something pretty unrelated, but you know yourself. You know, this gets your mind out of that state. In this book where I got a lot of my research from, it's 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness by Gunaratana. He gives an interesting example that I think just shows, you know, that it is a toolbox. He said that if, suppose you know that whenever you think of when your child took its first steps, you're just filled with love, just remembering of that. That can be in your toolbox for when you're feeling irritation toward another person, to bring that particular memory back to your mind. And it really can be, as long as it's not something harmful to yourself or harmful to other people, it really can be anything. If you can get out of one of these mind states by getting on your phone and you have one of these computer games where you get the coins and you buy fake fish for your fake aquarium, and that pulls you out of your mind state, go for it, as long as you're not hurting anybody. Now, this may sound kind of gimmicky, but I'm going to bring up a page here from this Gunaratana book that surprised me when I read it. And he's going through the different things you can go through to get rid of these mind states. And it gets to, you know, the last ditch effort. If all else fails, you must crush the negative thought with all your might. According to the Buddha's own words, like a strong man might crush a weaker man. In other words, you must never let the unwholesome thought win. You may be thinking that this method of gritting your teeth and crushing a negative thought seems so harsh, so unlike any other instructions you may have heard for dealing with the mind. You might even think that it seems out of character with the gentle nature of Buddhism. Or that I'm like, heck yeah, it does. What in the world? I mean, you know, you go on Facebook and you read these fuzzy quotes and they say they're from the Buddha, and your first thought is, the Buddha never, ever said something like that. It's just silly. So, like a strong man might crush a weaker man. So I went to Google, and it comes up. It comes up in a couple different sutras. The one that's relevant is the Vitakasantha Sutra. Rather than spell it, if one searched for the word Buddhism and then MN20, Mouse Nancy 20, it comes right up. And in this sutra, the Buddha's going through all the different steps to get rid of negative mind states, although he's not calling them the hindrances in this sutra. He's calling them, he's talking about the 3 poisons, which is basically the same thing, greed, anger, and delusion. The hindrances arrive out of the 3 poisons. So he's going through different steps you could try, each one a little more aggressive than the other. And there's quite a few that I did not mention in today's talk that were unfamiliar to me and might be more oriented toward Theravadan practice, Theravadan Buddhist practice, since I've never heard of them. But we get to the 5th one. If, while he is giving attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he should beat down, constrain, and crush mind with mind. When, with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Just as a strong man might seize a weaker man by the head or shoulders and beat him down, constrain him, and crush him, so too, when, with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, a bhikkhu beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind. His mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Completely surprised me. Now, there is always the possibility the Buddha never used the phrase to seize a weaker man by the head or shoulders and beat him down. Now, we don't know that he actually said that, but as with many things with this, it's not particularly relevant. We first look and see, is it consistent with his teachings? And his teachings are very much so that an untamed mind, that our thoughts wreak havoc when they're just allowed to go wherever they want to go. And then we can also examine our own life. What happens when we want our mind to just stop obsessing over something and it doesn't? And we can see that it can be harmful. Sometimes we can make some really huge mistakes when overwhelmed by desire or greed or whatnot. So the situation that Tim was in could have triggered all these hindrances. Ill will, well, that one's pretty obvious. Irritation toward his cellmate, just chattering away. And out of that ill will could have come something like, hey, buddy, shut that yapper, I'll shut it for you. I mean, and then what sort of life would that have been like the next year, sharing a cell with that individual? Anxiousness, worry. Yeah, in the prison, you change cellmates every 6 months to a year. But Tim could have started thinking, what if they just skip me next time around? I get him for 2 years. It doesn't even matter if it's rational or not. Worry doesn't care about the facts or what's rational. It's worry. Greed, desire. How can I try and manipulate the circumstances to get rid of this guy? Maybe I got a good reputation with the corrections officers. Maybe I could go and make up a story. Say that he threatened me or something. Maybe I can get him out of here. Dullness, drowsiness, with the sloth, torpor. This just sounds exhausting to me. It's like hopeless. And an essential reminder, I'm in prison, and there's this is what it is, and I can't even meditate. I can't even meditate because I tell this guy, please don't talk to me, and he just doesn't listen. And doubt. This practice is just too hard. It's too hard to do inside this place. I'm just going to quit. All these things could have grabbed him. And some of these thoughts may have crossed his mind, but they didn't linger. We know they didn't linger because he kept a clear mind. When you have these thoughts, it's hard to see things with wisdom. But Tim did come up with a solution. So let me share with that with you now. So day came where it was another time where Tim would normally do his Zazen meditation. And he said to himself, I'm going to try something. And he said to his cellmate, I think I'm going to lay down for a nap. And he went and he laid down on his cot and laid on his back, folded his hands in his stomach and shut his eyes. And his cellmate stopped talking to him. And not only did he stop talking to him, but he got super, super quiet. He'd walk around the room, he'd walk super slow so it didn't disturb Tim. Tim said there was a time he knew he was reading a magazine and he was turning the pages so slowly so he wouldn't disturb him. And so what it did to do, he found something that made sense in this guy's universe. This guy, meditation was so completely foreign to him that Tim saying, please don't talk to me during meditation, it meant nothing. But someone taking a nap, well, of course, to talk to someone when they're trying to sleep, that would be so rude. That was the universe this guy lived in. He understood that. So, it's not the ideal posture, because Tim also had to shut his eyes in order to pull this off. And we know from when we first learned meditation, our posture is important, that an alert, straight back and stuff keeps us alert. When we get drowsy, we're often slouched. So laying in bed with our eyes shut it's going to make you drowsy. And it's possible Tim fell asleep. I never asked him. He never complained about it. It was basically, that was the best option. And we know that the Buddha said meditation can be done in any of the three positions: standing, sitting, or lying down. And Katagiri, the founder of Hokyoji, there's a story on him that he was in the hospital for a long period of time, and he was going to be getting out soon. And one of his students said, well, aren't you glad to be going to be getting back to doing Zazen again? He's like, doing Zazen again? What in the world do you think I've been doing this whole time? In a hospital, but what else is there to do? So, not the ideal posture, but it worked for Tim. So, the last part of my talk here, something kind of sad. Tim actually passed away from COVID back in November of 2020. And, we all make mistakes. And Tim's mistakes in his life were pretty big. He was in prison for life. And, those type of mistakes cause a lot of pain and hurt to other people. But we're not just our mistakes. And there was a bigger picture to Tim. And I wanted to do something to kind of honor his memory. And also, it's so isolated in there. This story that I told you today, until today, probably only 7 or 8 people have ever heard it. And that seems a great shame. It's, whenever I think of him going to a summit and saying, I think I'm gonna just lay down for a nap, it just brings a smile to my face. It makes me smile. So anyway, that's my talk. Thanks everyone for listening.
Do we have any questions or comments for Tim? We have plenty of time. You can unmute yourself. Yeah, Myoho.
Well, thank you, Tim, for sharing that story of Tim. And I know I see Tim Yukel on the phone too. So one thing, like Tim Yukel and I, we would go on a Sunday once a month and be able to sit with the gentleman at Anamosa. And you brought a full circle to me today, because he would always say, well, no, you can do Zazen in any posture. And I'm like, no, you gotta be sitting, you gotta be facing the wall, you gotta, because I was, during the beginning of my practice, I was very kind of rigid, and it had to be a certain way, and, but I didn't know about the story about, how he had come to that, doing that, so that was very enlightening. So thank you for that. And just that it's good to contemplate on the hindrances as you did for us today, and just see if they are keeping us from our practice in any way, whether that be sitting in Zazen or throughout our daily life. Or I think that thank you very much. I appreciated that.
Thank you, Myoho. Mary?
Hi, thanks, Tim. As you were talking about the 5 hindrances, I could just feel my energy and my body getting just all charged up. And because I experience a lot of those hindrances every day. But what came to mind is a couple things. In Thich Nhat Hanh's book on, I think it's the fundamentals of Buddhist teaching, I remember feeling so relieved when he said, Thich Nhat Hanh said this, that you could do walking meditation. Like, that was just so wonderful for me to hear that, because I do a lot of walking. I do a lot of walking. Do a lot of walking on the trails in Duluth. I love to walk. And it was sort of this permission for somebody who has had a whole lifetime of really, kind of beating herself up for right and wrong. A lot of struggle with what's right, what's wrong. So that was wonderful. And then the second comment I want to give is breathing. So another thing that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, and what has really helped me in my yoga practice too, is feeling that it's like your energy is charged, your mind is on fire, and breathing, just breathing to soften really helps. And I think it's been certainly it's part of practicing, because we're so connected to our body that's been a really helpful practice for me. So I appreciate your words, and that's what came up in my head. I think that's all I have to say.
I'll add in one more. What you talked about today is near and dear to me, because the truth is, after 30 plus years of doing this, I don't like meditation. I just don't. I don't like sitting on that cushion. It hurts. It's often boring. I've been able to do it, but it's always a struggle. So like Mary said, this idea of, okay, can I do this process doing something else, walking, whatever? Now that I've gotten old and tired with lots of torpor, almost all of my meditation is lying downstairs in a chair, kind of fading in and out, but not falling asleep. Or all those times at night when I can't sleep, I'm going to meditate. And, like you say, I remember all the sutras about having to keep your eyes open and all the instruction that we had. But your comment about, I loved it about, you can meditate lying down, standing. So the basic mind thing that we're doing can be done without this position and the mudra and everything. And I don't often admit that, because when you're a long-term practicing Buddhist, and you say, well, I don't like meditation and I don't do it the way, people kind of look at you like, well, what's wrong with you? Have a little motivation and get out there and do it. But it's just the truth for me. So I appreciate your words. And of course, as soon as you said what was the solution to Tim's problem, I immediately said I would take a nap, because almost all my meditation is sort of in a nap position, but I'm awake. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Abhi.
Hi, Abby.
Hey, thanks, Tim and Mary and others for sharing. I guess I might have missed the point, but it seems like in this teaching, there's the idea of meeting force with force, of you're having these incredibly reckless thoughts and you commit yourself to stomping them out. And it does sort of bring into this idea of there's room for anger. There's room for everything. Like in the anti-racist struggle, there's room for, it is necessary to have skillful use of anger. Or even these protesters in Canada, like as much as it's infiltrated by the alt-right and Nazism, there is still this incredible frustration of losing family members, of losing work, of having no control of your life and gathering together. And so there's no sort of technique or emotion that's off limits. But it's all getting back to something that this doesn't seem related, but I do often struggle with some version of the thought of I hate myself. and it's pervasive. And I've tried, a million whatever different things, talking to myself, breathing, et cetera, and I don't know, like, is there room for force in this process of saying this thought is fucking absurd, I cannot going to tolerate it? But I'm just sort of wondering if that is sort of the heart of that teaching, or what you extract from that, given that it seems so sort of violent, and often talking to yourself in a forceful way is the opposite of what works. It's often something more gentle, like taking a nap. So.
No, excellent question. Yeah, when it comes to mostly it revolves on if it's skillful, and it takes time to find out what's skillful with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
A long time meditation practice can help us not take our thoughts so seriously. So the negative thoughts about yourself, they won't carry as much weight as maybe they did a year ago, even though they may still be there. One of the things in my tool bag of tricks, and it usually comes up on worry, and I worry about, like, I'm going to have a conversation with someone that I'm not looking forward to. I have to tell them something, or just the conversation is going to be stressful. So my mind will start to spin over this conversation over, and I don't want to be thinking about it all the time, but I'll be picturing, I say this and he says that and I say this. And at a certain point, I'll go to my toolbox and I will insert into the conversation, blah, 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 blah. Because that's kind of all it is, just a bunch of blah, blah, blah. Just, my God, Tim, give it a rest. Let this stop, So I label it for what it is. It's just a soap opera that's going on. It's the same plot over and over. The gentler methods that are more like getting misted in the rain and eventually getting wet may not seem like they're working, but I think, to keep observing your thoughts and the negative thoughts about yourself and letting them go and coming back to the breath is still the number one way. But, we develop all sorts of ways to deal with that. And at some point, getting really angry at yourself might have some help. There's other times it may not do anything good at all. But hope that was helpful.
Thanks.
Jim.
Took this class at Upaya on Shantideva. And Shantideva, much beloved by a lot of Buddhist students. And I was kind of shocked when I read the Shantideva. Shantideva had a lot of issues. And that could be why people love him so much. But I don't know, about a third, halfway through the book, he's talking about his anger. And he decides the way to deal with his anger is to turn his anger on his anger. And I was kind of, what? Just like you were, is like, is this going to work? And I thought, well, maybe back then that was reasonable, but maybe we've got better ways to deal with anger issues by now than they had back then. Because I'm still skeptical of turning anger on anger, but there is energy to anger, and I think you can take that energy from the anger and use that. But I'm not sure turning your anger on your anger does anything but multiply your anger and your self-hatred, and not working with the kindness, which is kind of the basis of things. But there is energy to it, and there are a lot of situations where anger is justified and the energy is there and it's telling you something, but I'm still skeptical about turning anger on anger. So.
I think I'd agree with that, Jim. It's kind of my feeling skeptical. Carol.
Just the quote that you did from the sutra didn't actually talk about anger. It talked about force. and strength.
Yes.
And you can use force without cultivating anger. I mean, you can still, struggle with things and wrestle with things without necessarily being angry. I agree with Ryushin there that I don't know, anger on top of anger doesn't seem to be a solution, but being forceful about confronting whether it's the proliferation of thoughts, whether they're good thoughts or bad thoughts, it doesn't matter. You get caught up in proliferation or papancha, what they call it. And we just string these stories out, and some of the stories are groovy and some of them are not so nice. But we get caught up in them. But there is a way, and I think it's appropriate to use force to confront some of these, but not necessarily angry force. Anyway, that's what I got.
Thank you, Carl.
I'll chime in for a moment. I remember reading that sutra. I thought you said MM, but I think you said MN, which probably means Majjhima Nikaya. And I don't know if you said the number 20 or not. You did?
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember reading that many, many years ago. And you go through all these layers. Okay, this is what you do, if this is happening. You do, blah, 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 blah. And this is what you do if this is happening. Blah, 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 blah. And finally, if you can't control it, you just crush it down. And I'm not, when I read that, I thought, I don't know if that's going to work for me or not. And I still remember it very clearly. But I'll tell you, like last night, I had one of the worst nights sleeping in a long, long, long time. And I went to bed fairly early, but I woke up at like midnight and just things going through my mind over and over and over again. I said, okay, like Paul was saying, okay, I'm just going to do meditation. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Didn't work. But I mean, to my satisfaction, in other words, I didn't fall asleep. I just still laid there for 4 hours. But regarding Carl's point, there was kind of an energy that says, okay, I've got to stop this proliferation in my mind. It's just going crazy. So there's like, it's kind of, okay, breathe in and breathe out and breathe in and just, try to just deal with that as best you can. However, I'm just not sure force would have done anything. If it would have done something, yeah, great, I would do it. But I just don't. How do you force something to happen? So that was just an experience that happened for me just last night. And I don't know if I should say this either, but regarding Paul's comment, I'm finding sitting to be challenging these days. It's just, and I'm the guiding teacher of Hokyoji, so maybe that's not a good thing to say, but it's really, but I mean, this last winter practice period, I wound up with a swollen left leg again. It's like from just sitting. And I had a blood clot, a few months ago. And I'm thinking, man, this is getting kind of rough. So anyway, it's kind of going. And one other story I was going to share, probably one of the hardest experience I've ever had. You talked about the person in jail, Tim. And I remember that Shokan Weinkauf has spoken here and there at prisons. And he also spent, several years in a monastery. And he said, being in a monastery is like being in a prison. It really kind of is in some ways. Not exactly the same, of course. But anyway, I had to share a room with this young man. He was like 19 years old. And he really just came to this temple to be fed and to and sit a little zazen. I don't know if he was really into zazen, but what he came there to do is to study Japanese, because we had like 4 or 5 hours a day of free time. And that was his main mission. And so I was sharing this room with him, and we got up at 3:30 every day, but he would stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning after we went to bed at 9, studying Japanese with the light on. I'm telling you, if I wasn't like almost going crazy with this guy, and we didn't get along too well. We had a couple encounters. He was 19 and I was 30 at the time, and I needed at least 6-7 hours of sleep. And apparently he could get by on 2 or 3. But anyway, it was like I was in the in a temple type situation with this cellmate that, well, he didn't talk, but he would just keep the light on and study his Japanese. And man, talking about feeling like I was being tortured. So those are my comments. Not too much to say, not too insightful, but that's kind of where I'm at now in my life. So
It's okay.
you're welcome.
I'm Scott Bryant. I just wanted to thank you for sharing that dilemma. My brother had several prisoners' dilemmas in his time, 28 years in jail. And certainly looking at the totality of the situation, there's certainly been moments when I've had some ill will, particularly toward your governor there in Iowa. But I'm trying to work through those things. We certainly hold no ill will towards the corrections staff who tried their hardest and did protect those people. I thank you for taking time to remember my brother. I think he and the prisoners there are a great resource to your community. I think there's lots. The book that hasn't been written maybe is about the prisoners and their use or living with Buddha. And that may be the next book that could be so helpful. And I appreciate all of you coming together and looking at these dilemmas. Adaptation is clearly one of the strengths of a prisoner who's a lifer. You have to be able to adapt because it's for life. And the things like whether you lie down or you stand or you walk or you're still breathing. And I think that is where my brother got to, is I'm not like everyone else right now, and I can't practice like everyone else, and yet I will not give up, and I will continue. And he did. He was Buddhist or practicing Buddhist before he went to prison, and he did manage to adapt and continue throughout his life. And I appreciate all of you very, very much for continuing that. And please continue to water and feed his tree outside of the Zen Center. We especially appreciate the tree. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Scott.
very much, Tim. Or Scott.
Okay, if that's the end of our comments, I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. And next week, next week we do not have a Sunday morning Dharma talk because everybody is going to be caught up in the Katagiri Roshi 33rd Memorial activities that are going to be at Ryomanji and at Hokyoji next Sunday. So we're going to be skipping a week, 2 weeks from today. We will have Reverend Jushin, and his talk is going to be, how did we come to be in this morning? So interesting. Jushin's always got interesting talks going on. As far as the Katagiri 33rd Memorial, that's going to be available by Zoom, both at Ryomanji and at Hokyoji. And there's a page on the website now, and it shows the invitation and the Zoom links. So if anybody is interested in joining that, I think the North American Bishop of the Soto Shu, which is the Soto Zen headquarters in Los Angeles, Reverend Akiba. Is that the right pronunciation? Akiba? Anyway, he will be performing the ceremonies at Ryomanji and at Hokyoji. And Katagiri Roshi's family will be there, his sons and grandchildren and his wife. So should be a special time. Okay, well, one other thing here. I need to remember, as always, your generosity sustains Hokyoji's facilities and programs. We couldn't do this without you. Please consider making a donation. There's a link in the chat box that you could click on, and your gift of any amount will be a great benefit, and we are deeply grateful for your support. Thank you again. We'll chant the 4 vows together, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Beings are numberless. We vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to win them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.